Hello, and welcome to another episode of Drafting Motherhood. I'm your host, Michaela Burnham, and today we're going to be talking about how I accidentally became an author. Now, I know we've already talked about this before, but just to recap, there was one night I got a really bad book from Imagination Library, read it to my kids, and thought, well, I can write something better than this. And turns out all it takes is one edible and a random thought about a cupcake, and you can write a story. So after I realized, okay, this isn't just a random thought, what if I actually did become an author? My first thought in this whole process was, okay, well, what do I want the heart of the stories to be about? Because that just felt more important than figuring out what characters looked like. My goal wasn't just to write. I wanted to write something that mattered. And so I started thinking about, okay, well, what books did I love whenever I was a kid? And then that turned into why did I love them? And as I started thinking about all of them, they all had the same theme. There was an underlying message that made you think a little more. It was books like The Giving Tree and The Rainbow Fish, and Love You Forever was one that actually kind of creeped me out when I was a kid because I was like, why is she crawling across the floor? But now I'm a mom and I read that book and I sob because I understand the meaning behind it. She's not actually going and getting a ladder and driving over to her adult son's house and picking him up and crawling across the floor like a creepy lady. It's just something she wished she could do, but she can't anymore because he's grown. Anyways, now I love that story because it's a deeper message. So I realized that I just loved books, even from an early age, that talked about social emotional themes. So I thought it would be fitting to create books that stuck with those SEL themes. And while I do have a degree in child development and I have lots of experience in the classroom, I still made sure to do my current research on all things social emotional learning and also themes that are prevalent in the market and maybe where they're kind of lacking. I just wanted to see if there was a gap that I could help fill, or if there are authors who are touching on these specific topics. I want to help amplify those voices that are really honing in on the importance of teaching kids about positive self image and the importance of community and working together. So, our cupcake story ended up actually being inspired by myself and how I wish self image would have been taught to me. Because I think it's crazy that self image is something that at one point or another in everyone's life we struggle with a little bit, but yet we're not really helping each other. We need to be stepping in and saying, no, ma'am, do not talk about yourself like that. No, sir, we don't talk about our bodies in a negative way like that. We know how it feels to talk to ourselves like that. And we know those deep roots that can set in. So why not create literature where they might see themselves and say, oh, maybe I don't need to change myself to fit in. And I'm not saying they shouldn't try new styles. They absolutely should. That is a part of finding out who you want to be. But that starts with having a strong foundation of already knowing who they are. Because the love and support that they're getting from us is helping them build their confidence. The words that we're saying are going to be the ones that they are later mimicking. And that's becoming their internal dialogue. When all the trends and the fads eventually fade away, they know how to find their way back to themselves. So if we're also doing this in person and then we continue it in the literature, it's only going to deepen their sense of positive self perception. Okay, so after I went through the process of identifying my what and my why, I had to figure out the how. So the day after reading the bad book, I started doing some basic research and I thought, let's be honest, how hard is it really to write a book? And turns out, writing children's books is not putting some words on a page and slapping some pretty pictures with it. Because after I really started getting into the research, I felt like I'd stumbled upon an iceberg. It just kept going deeper and deeper, and I was learning about page counts and spreads. What the hell is a bleed margin? Also, why do you keep switching from inches to pixels when I'm talking about the book size? Okay, hear me out. Can I just hold my hands up and say, I would like a book about this big? You know what? Actually, let's do it landscape. I'll even tell you orientation. I can do that. Why do I have to math right now? Okay, but obviously that is ridiculous. That's not how this industry works. I realized that I might be a tad bit in over my head. So I allowed myself to feel really overwhelmed by all of this information. But when I realized on the third day that I just had story after story coming in and feeling like I had to write this down, I realized that this wasn't some Michaela ADHD hobby that I'm going to pick up and love for 2 weeks and then put back on the shelf. But I had to mentally decide, is this going to be something that I really commit to? Because not only is it my time, it's somebody else's time too. Cassie, my illustrator and best friend, also has ADHD. So, to make sure that we both knew that this wasn't a random whim, we had a lot of phone calls that sounded like, "Oh my god, are you serious? Because if you're serious, I'm serious. If you're all in, I'm all in." Because I feel like we got to do this. It's something we got to do. From there, we started our somewhat chaotic, very flexible, and somehow pretty productive workflow. Since we're both full time stay at home moms, we each have two young toddlers. Our life revolves around their schedules and when they decide to schedule their big feelings. Also, living in different time zones can get a little tricky sometimes, but over the last 6 months, I feel like we have found our groove. When we conduct our meetings, they are very serious, very professional, quiet tone. No, that's a lie. It's usually on FaceTime. We've put a movie on for the kids or show in the background while we look like we've just rolled out of bed. I'm sipping on my coffee. She's got her boobie out, feeding the baby. We've both peed twice without muting it. You know, really fun stuff. And then after we're done chit chatting for about 20 minutes, as if we don't communicate in memes every single day throughout the week, we're catching each other up on what we've missed in between that. And then we actually do start the real work. Cassie live streams her illustrations using Krita, and we do live art sessions. She'll sketch while I describe a scene or a character. We'll tweak faces and colors. And once we start to hear that the show is no longer making the little ones happy, it's now turned into a WWE wrestling match in the living room, we know it's time to wrap it up. And then we just keep in touch throughout the week and we text each other random ideas and she updates me on her illustrations. Since Cassie is used to traditional drawing, she had to learn all the ins and outs of creating digital art. So while she was learning to do that, I decided to build our website. Do we have a book? No. At this point, did we have a single page written? Also, no. But we had a vision. And so I ran with it. I did it through Wix, which basically means I figured it out through YouTube University. No idea what I was doing with that. And while I was doing that, I was also researching, taking lots of notes on ISBN costs and self publishing avenues versus traditional publishing. I was joining all kinds of Facebook author groups and Reddit threads just so I can kind of understand the nuance of all of this stuff. And if you are in the industry right now and you're listening and you're like, this all kind of sounds like run of the mill stuff, I need you to remember I had not thought about ever becoming an author in my life. So I didn't have any prior knowledge. So this was a whole new beast, but I was so ready to take it on. And you know why? because I made some space. I made some mental space. I did the work. It's getting real cramped in there. But learning all of this stuff and this whole process started to feel so fun. It didn't feel like my past hobbies that I never really fully committed to. This felt, I don't know, like a mission, something I was supposed to do to move forward in life. So, where are we now? Well, we have a shared Google Doc where we keep all of our information. During my research time, I also looked up how to write manuscripts rather than just like doing text on a page. I wanted to have like a proper format. So we have lots and lots of those. And Cassie is working on bringing our unique cupcake story to life. And in that waiting period, I thought, I don't want to bury her further with more manuscripts. I've got a lot of creative juices flowing up here. I don't know where to put them. So I thought I would use a different medium and I would come yap into a microphone. And that is how Drafting Motherhood was born. Because why process your feelings in private, in a diary, when you could just start a podcast and share them with the world? But in all honesty, thanks for listening and giving me this outlet to talk through all of this stuff that I got circling up here. I am thoroughly enjoying this writing process and becoming an author and learning all about it. But I am equally enjoying the outlet that this show has provided. I love talking about the ups and downs of motherhood because that is my life right now. So I'm somehow on this equally important and fun journey. I don't know if they'll end up at different places, at the same place. Who knows? I hope they're at the same place, but either way, who cares? I'm having a fun time right now. I feel like we're in the very beginning, so that's okay. You gotta start somewhere, and I'm having fun starting somewhere with you guys. Because I remember there was a time in motherhood where I felt really lonely, and I feel so lucky that I found friends who helped me find my voice again. So I hope that this show gives you a little piece of what they gave to me. So if you're a published author who would like to share your perspective or your wisdom on this journey to self-publishing, I would love to hear from you. Send me an email to draftingmotherhoodpod@gmail.com. I would also love to hear if you're a newbie like me, just trying to figure things out. Let's figure it out together. Because sure, we could each learn things on YouTube University, but where's the fun in that? I much prefer to yap. So, with that, I'll see you next time. Let's keep talking.